It is Monday morning. It is 8 a.m., which means it is time for Burnout at Breakfast. And today we are talking about why we need to stop coaching burnout like it's a mindset problem. Stop coaching burnout like it's a mindset problem. If you're joining me live, let me know that you can hear me. Say hi. Pop a comment to let me know that you are there. Hopefully comments are all working. Everything is live. So stop coaching burnout like it is a mindset problem. Now, again, I see this quite a lot, and particularly from coaches who do not fully understand, or not even halfway understand, the impact that burnout can have on the brain and the body. The fact that burnout can mirror the impact of trauma on the body and the brain and the nervous system. So very often, the assumption for lots of coaches is we just need to think differently, right? If you think differently, change your mindset, think more positively, just change how you think, change how you look at the world, change your attitude to work, change your attitude to your work environment, change all of that stuff. And it's like, burnout is just going to magically shift. But we've also got then coaches that aren't able to spot burnout in the first place. And so they carry on with their usual techniques. And again, this isn't a criticism of individual coaches, right? When I trained and qualified as an executive coach, the focus was on mindset. I trained as a solution-focused executive coach. That was about movement. It was about momentum. It was about focusing on the future, getting people to think positively, change their minds, big into kind of growth mindset and moving people forwards. But what I very quickly realized, the more clients that were coming to me that were at burnout, and that was happening because I was sharing my own burnout story, I very quickly realized that a lot of the tools and techniques that I had been taught were not enough for clients who were either on the brink of burnout or coming through the other side. So I have trained and studied and joined the dots. And what I want to kind of share with you this morning, I've got a couple of props that we'll go through this morning as well, but I want to I want to actually show you what's going on in the brain, what's happening with decision making, so that you can then start to join some of the dots yourself to understand why we can't just focus on mindset if we want to move people through burnout. Now, in my work in burnoutology, I look at all of the dots from burnout, really, right? So I'm looking at it from a cognitive perspective, I'm looking at it from a somatic perspective, I'm looking at it from a nervous system perspective. We're joining all of the dots from burnout. So psychology, neuroscience, biology, lots and lots of stuff that we've got going on. I've got kind of 20 minutes or so with you this morning, 25 minutes. So we're just going to focus on a very, very small part, but I want to introduce you to just a couple of kind of, I suppose, small concepts, some quick ideas, hopefully some quick ways that you can begin to change your own mindset when it comes to burnout, and what you need to be doing to coach differently, to be more aware when burnout is in the room. So the first thing that I want to kind of talk to you about, I want to show you a ski slope. Right, I don't know about the rest of you. It's ridiculously hot already here. I've already got fans and all sorts going on in the background. I know some of you are in different parts of the world, and you may not necessarily have the same. But typically, here's what happens when we're not scoring on art this morning, right? But this, everybody, is a ski slope. Right, I want you to envision what you can see here. Right, this is a ski slope. Okay, now imagine that your client has been making the same decisions over and over and over again. Now, again, when we think about burnout is toxicity minus sense of self equals burnout. Toxicity minus sense of self equals burnout. Now, some of that toxicity might have been workplaces. Some of it might have been habits, patterns, thoughts, behaviors. Might have been years and years of people pleasing, might have been years of trying to prove their worth, might have been years of working in toxic environments and thinking that they're the only person that needs to change it. But typically, in order to get to that point of burnout, there will have been some repetitive things that will have been happening, and not just one, but a series of repetitive thoughts, repetitive habits, repetitive beliefs, all of this kind of stuff, right? So what happens is, if we think about our ski slope, all of the repetition will have created a path down the mountain, right? So there will have been a path. I haven't got tissues with me, we'll have to use some paper, but they will have been repeating a path down the ski slope, okay? Now, skiing might not be your thing, but if you've ever walked along the beach, right, in the wet sand where other people have walked first, you can see where other people have been. If you walk along fields or if you walk along paths, you can see the path that is most walked. If you're on a ski slope, you can see the path that is most skied, right? If you kind of go off piste, something, it might be a particular path that you don't necessarily want to go on. But we have these repeated patterns. And of course, when we've got these repeated patterns, they are literally becoming ingrained in the ground, right? There's some indentations. There's these indentations to kind of go where we want to go. Now, typically as coaches, if we just say, become more resilient, right? Finish work early one day, set a boundary, start to take a lunch break, do whatever it is that we want to do. There's one path that gets created, right? We say, do it once, just do it once. But of course, then what happens if we're on our ski slope is as it then snows tonight, so I don't know if this will work with my paper, but as it snows tonight, that path then vanishes because the snow's fallen. So it snowed over this last path. We need to be focusing on repeating patterns and behaviors, right? Small and consistent changes. And the more that we start to walk this path, the more, as it snows, this one will start to vanish, okay? So we start to create more of a different path. But what makes this even more complicated for someone that is on the brink of burnout, somebody that's living with chronic stress, there is an impact on the brain, right? Now, when we are happy, healthy, high-performing humans, we operate from an empty glass, right? Let me show you an empty glass, right? When we are happy, healthy, high-performing humans, we're operating from an empty glass, right? The more we have toxicity in our lives, the more we lose our sense of self, the more stuff gets stuck in our glass, right? Our glass begins to overflow. The more that our glass overflows, the more that we move from the intellectual part of our brain, this top part of our brain here, where we have all of the answers, right? In the intellectual brain, we are positive, we can be creative, we can be innovative, we can come up with solutions and answers, right? We see the good, everything, positive, we are solution focused. We can think our way brilliantly, right? There's a problem in front of us. There's the solution. Off we go. Okay. The more full that our glass gets, the more toxicity that we have within this glass, the less of ourselves that we have room for in this glass, the more time we spend in the primitive part of the brain. The primitive part of the brain has the hypothalamus, which is our chemical reactions, our amygdala, which is our fight, flight, freeze response, and our hippocampus, which is our previous patterns and behaviors. So the more full our glass, the more time we spend in the primitive brain. Now, in the primitive brain, we cannot be innovative. We cannot be creative. We are not positive, right? This is where a lot of the cynicism with burnout can come from. We can't innovate. We can't be creative. We're not positive. We are really being governed by chemicals, our fight, flight, freeze response, right? Our threat response, and all of our previous patterns and behaviors. So if we come back to our ski slope, the previous patterns and behaviors, because they will have been going on for so long, will automatically continue to be the default when we're in the primitive part of the brain. So even if we begin to change habits and behaviors for a week or a month or a few months, the more full that our glass gets, the more time we will spend in the primitive brain, the more we are going to continue to default to our previous patterns and behaviors. And then what happens is, as it begins to snow at night, the new habits that we have been trying to change, that we've been trying to create, the new thoughts, all of the positivity that we've been trying to go for, we begin to lose this path and we begin to default. Now, what I have been seeing over the last few months are coaches that have been very proudly talking about the fact that they have been sacking clients. right? My client's not making any progress. My client's not trying. I've sacked my clients because I'm the sort of coach that wants progress. I'm the sort of coach that wants commitment. I'm the sort of coach that wants change, right? They're not making the progress. They're not putting the effort in, and therefore I am sacking my clients. Now, the first time I saw one of these posts, I was really, really shocked, right? Just the language, the pride that came in this post from, I've just sacked my clients, aren't I brilliant? As I started to look at the comments in support of this coach shocked me even more, because the amount of people that were agreeing with it was really kind of getting to me. Now, there are stats out there, right? Whether you look at the burnout report, the 2026 burnout report, whether you look at stats that are talking about mental health, mental well-being, burnout is growing at an incredible rate. Best case scenario, 74% of the workforce are at or on the brink of burnout, right? 74%. And this isn't, people can't just snap out of it. When the closer we get to burnout, the less likely we are to realize that we are getting closer to burnout. And again, that's all being governed by our brain, right? That's our primitive brain, our fight, flight, freeze response. Our brain and our body are literally trying to keep us safe and trying to keep us alive. So when we've got a coach, it's like, just think differently, right? Let's just, let's try this different thing. Let's put another habit. Let's put another change. Let's just think positively. That new path of think positively is not accessible. It's not that the clients don't want to change, but that new path is not even accessible whilst they are in the primitive part of their brain, because they are being governed by fight, flight, freeze. They're being governed by previous patterns and behaviors, because again, when we're in that part of the brain, our brain wants to keep us safe, right? Our brain wants to keep us safe. So we're on red alert. The brain assumes, and again, it's primitive brain for a reason, right? Go back caveman, cavewoman times, right? If we were all out hunting right now and we can see the wild animals on the horizon, there's no way that our brain would go, Kelly, now is a really, really great time to chill out, do a bit of sunbathing and have a little picnic, right? My brain, your brain, our clients' brains are going to be even more on red alert, because we can see the wild animals in the background. And if we don't continue to pay attention, not only are we not going to get the kill to take back to our village to provide and to feed and to clothe and to keep all of the rest of our family and community warm, but we may become the hunted and we may not make it back at all. Now, of course, hopefully, we're not dealing with wild animals right now, right? But we are focusing on, right, the threat response has become the next email. The threat response has become the next, how are we going to pay our bills next month? The threat response has become the next meeting invite that we get with absolutely no agenda whatsoever, that just says, Kelly, I need to speak to you at 9 o'clock this morning. And I go straight to, like, what have I done wrong? Right? It's that level of stress response. And as coaches, if we just can, just be more resilient, just change a habit, just do this. If we're not working on how we get our clients out of this primitive state and back into the intellectual brain, right, where they have the answers, where they can be happy, healthy, and high performing, where they can start to empty the glass little by little, day by day, right? We need to start emptying the glass. The more we empty the glass, the more we can stay in the intellectual part of our brain, right? Coming up with the solutions and the answers and the positive thinking. And only when we are in that intellectual brain can we then begin to walk a different path and then change the habits and then change the thinking and then change the behavior. But if you've ever found yourself in a stress situation, if you've ever found yourself in a trauma situation, now I don't use the word, I'm not throwing the word trauma around, like, oh my God, it's so traumatic that I broke a nail on Saturday, right? I'm talking real felt trauma, right? A traumatic event, a traumatic experience, lived trauma. If you've ever been in a high stress state, if you've ever been at the point of burnout, you will know your body reacts to the situations before your brain is able to take over. right? There's a feeling. Maybe it's a tightness, maybe it's a tension, maybe it's something clenching, right? Maybe it's all of those things. Maybe it's just a feeling in your gut that's like, this isn't safe, this isn't right, this isn't where I should be going. Our body knows first. And again, lots of coaching. This is where I think all coaching needs to be burnout informed. I'm not saying this is a nice to have anymore. All training needs to be, all coaching needs to be burnout informed from here on in. Because if we only work with mindset, if we're only working with change your thoughts, think more positively, we're missing what's happening within the body. We're not moving people from the primitive brain back into the intellectual brain. And again, most coaching, again, I say this with all of the training that I've done in terms of coaching, most coaching assumes that clients are already in the intellectual brain. Right? Most coaching assumes that our clients can still access that primitive brain, that we still have agency, that we can still make decisions quickly, that we can change and grow quickly. Now, again, best case scenario, 74% of the workforce are at or on the brink of burnout. I do not think that every single coach is only coaching the 26% of people that are not at burnout. I think a large proportion of us are coaching a lot of that 74%. Right? Just, from conversations that we're having, how can we not be coaching any of that 74%? And if we're not burnout informed, if we are assuming that all our clients, maybe, they're just a little bit disinterested, maybe they're just a little bit lazy. If you are a coach that is very proudly out there saying that you are sacking your clients because they're not making progress, or they're, not bothered, or they're not interested, and you do not understand the impact that burnout is having on the body and the brain, firstly, I'm going to kind of question, should you be coaching anyway? But secondly, I want to say, this is why we need every single coach to be burnout informed. Because when we see some of these things, if our clients genuinely cannot access that intellectual part of their brain to come up with the solutions and the answers, right? If a client is sat in front of you that is genuinely like, I do not know the answer, and your questions, what would it be if you did know the answer, right? Let's explore that, right? What would it be if you did know the answer? And that you can literally see them shrinking in their chair. I'm going to say, right, I was probably, I was in the same boat as you, right? I genuinely believe that every single one of us has all of the answers that we need within us, right? Genuinely believe that. Genuinely believe we all have the answers. But when burnout is present, we don't all have access to those answers, because the brain, the body, the nervous system is actually stopping us from being able to access those things, because all of the signals that are going through the body are telling us that we are in a threat state, and everything just kind of clicks into place to literally just keep us alive. I want you to just let that land for a moment. That is what is happening in the body and the brain of your clients. So if you're then getting frustrated as a coach, or, you're taking to sleep, oh my God, like I've got another client that's just, trying, not making an effort, not moving forwards. If you're a coach that's putting all over your LinkedIn how proud you are to be sacking your clients, instead of realizing they can't even access the other path. It's not that they're lazy, that they're not trying. It's not that they don't want to. They physically cannot access the other path because they are in the primitive part of their brain. They are literally in survival mode. And if you're ignoring all of that, that's when we begin to have issues. And it's not the client that is not seeing, not being able to move forward. It's you as the coach that is missing what is going on in the room for your client when you refuse to acknowledge that, you're not burnout informed, that you don't understand burnout, that you don't understand the neuroscience or the biology or the neurology, the psychology, all of that stuff. I'm seeing, again, lots and lots of coaches out there that are like, well, I get burnout. I'm seeing a growing number of people that are just adding burnout to their headlines on LinkedIn. And yet, having conversations, oh yeah, like I get it. We just focus on sleep and we focus on, kind of morning routine. Not going to happen, because again, changing sleep is a new path. If you are in a threat state, if you are in the primitive brain being governed by all of that stuff, just saying to a client, just work on improving your sleep, right? That's all we're going to do. We're just going to sleep more. It's not a path that the client's brain can access, because sleep is a state of rest. Survival says, got to stay on red alert all of the time, right? Got to stay on red alert in order to stay safe, in order to stay alive. Sleep stops you from being on red alert and in survival mode. Now, I know that we need more sleep. I know that we need more rest, but what you need to be working on as coaches, as burnout-informed coaches, is moving your clients from that primitive state into that intellectual state, emptying some of their glass, brain and body and nervous system, not just mindset. We can't think our way out of burnout. And again, we can't think our way out of burnout because we stay in the primitive brain. It's got to be a whole person, whole body response to burnout recovery. If we're not doing all of that, again, burnout equation, right? Toxicity minus sense of self equals burnout. If we're not reducing the toxicity and rebuilding the sense of self, but from a state of safety, right? Safety, we've got to get the brain out of survival mode. We've got to get the brain out of threat mode, back into the intellectual brain. At the same time, we've got to be emptying the glass. That's burnout-informed coaching. Starts with safety. Burnout-informed coaching is understanding the impact on the brain and the body. Burnout-informed coaching is understanding when we need to refer clients onto specialists that fully understand burnout. Burnout-informed coaching is knowing that clients can't think their way out of burnout. Burnout-informed coaching is knowing that our clients need a different path. Burnout-informed coaching is not promoting all over your LinkedIn that you're proudly sacking all of your clients at the moment because they're a bit lazy and they're not focused on what it is that they need to do. And I believe that burnout-informed coaching is the only way that coaching can be safe at the moment. Because as I said, best case scenario, depending on what stats you look at, 74% of the workforce are at or on the brink of burnout. And I do not believe that as coaches, we're only working with the 26% that are, happy, healthy, high performing with absolutely no issues whatsoever. Coaching has to be safe. Coaching has to be burnout informed. In the run up to my first burnout, the first burnout that made me really seriously ill, and my second burnout, the one that nearly killed me, I was working with amazing coaches. Amazing coaches. None of them saw my burnout. And I'm not saying that my coaches were the only contributing factor to my burnout, but if they had been able to coach differently, I genuinely believe, right, as coaches, we hold a really unique role and a really unique space for our clients, right? When was the last time that any of us, right, outside of coaching, had somebody really, really focus their time and attention when that whole focus of that entire session was on you? Right? When every single thing is about you and your growth and your understanding and your state and your safety and your career and whatever it is that you're in coaching for, right? Coaches hold a really, really unique space and a really, really unique relationship with their clients. The ability to hold that space effectively, to move people forwards. But if we don't know how to modify our coaching, if we don't know what questions to avoid if someone's on the brink of burnout and which ones to lean more into, if we don't understand how to create that level of safety, we don't understand how to work with clients when they're in that intellectual part of their brain to slowly begin to empty that glass, reduce the toxicity, rebuild the sense of self and get them back into the intellectual brain so they can finally start to change the mindset and the habits and the beliefs and all that sort of stuff. If we don't know how to do all of that beforehand, we should not be coaching clients at burnout. And again, I lived this, I've seen it, I see it repeatedly. If you are someone that has been at burnout and you've found your own way through it, and then you think, okay, I'm now gonna coach people through burnout, your lived experience does not equal expertise. Your sample size of your lived experience is 1. That does not mean that all of that is going to work for every single client that you work with, because your experience is a sample size of 1. I've done a video actually on that for my YouTube channel for Thursday, right? Survivorship bias in burnout coaching. That'll be live on Thursday morning. I'll pop, if I remember, I'll pop the link on here. But that's genuinely what I mean, right? Burnout is not a mindset problem. And as coaches, we've got to stop pretending that it is. We need to fully understand the impact on the brain and the body. I absolutely 100% believe that coaching needs to be burnout informed, not as a nice to have, but as an absolute necessity. We've got, we can't continue to just keep coaching like we were in like 2019. Right, assuming that everybody's got agency and clarity and can make decisions, and everybody's operating from, just a calm and happy place. Stress, burnout, chronic stress, mental health issues. Now they're all different, but they're all rising, and we have to be able to do something with it. Right? What's Chantel saying here? In burnout, when a coach says do this, I want to scream because I just can't. My brain says you can. It's so easy. The rest of me says no way you're going to. That's exactly it, Chantel. And yet we continue to see coaches that are like, you can do it, right? And it's not about just encouragement. It's not about working on resilience. We genuinely need to be working on the safety and the state before we start to work on self and strategy. That's what I teach and train in the Burnout Academy. It's what the master burnout coaches that are spending this year with me are like, that's been ingrained in everything that they've been doing with me since we started last November. That's where we start in the Burnout Informed Coach. That's where every single masterclass that we do in the Burnout Coach Collective is focused on, right? It's about state and safety before we start to focus on self and strategy. Coaching, again, it doesn't mean that anything that you're doing isn't right as a coach. It doesn't mean that the tools that you've got still can't be used. It doesn't mean that they're not effective, but it does mean you have to modify. There's stuff we've got to do before we get into the coaching. There's stuff we've got to do before we get into the kind of movement and the growth and all that sort of stuff. And if you don't understand what all of that looks like, you're not a burnout informed coach. You're not a burnout aware coach, and you should not be working with people who are at or on the brink of burnout. I'm not going to stop talking about this, right? Coaching is not safe for someone on the brink of, or coming through the other side of burnout, if it is not burnout informed. Some of you coaches out there are doing more harm than good. And that's not guesswork. That's people that are coming to me and other coaches that I have trained, having worked with another coach and ended up in burnout again, or ended up feeling worse, or ended up like totally in the midst of burnout, feeling like the biggest failure on earth. Right? I've got the evidence to say that coaches that are not burnout informed should not be coaching people that are on the brink of or coming through the other side of burnout, because I know that you are doing more harm than good, even if you're doing it with the very best of intentions. And again, this is part of what we get told in our coach training, right? Anybody can coach. Anybody's coachable is what we get told. And anybody is, but burnout informed coaching looks different for a reason. Right, I'm going to leave it there today. I said I was only going to go for 20-25 minutes. I've done half an hour. If you would like to know more of these, Burnout at Breakfast every single Monday at 8 a.m. Next week, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to ask you for your questions. If you have got burnout questions that you would like answering, next Monday, I am going to do a live Q&A. You can either join me live, post them in the chat, and I'll answer them for you, or get your questions into the chat, or DM me. And with whatever questions that you want answering, as long as it's burnout related, I will answer it for you. So if you have got burnout related questions, if you are a coach that has got questions relating to clients and or burnout, but for anybody next week, I'm going to do a live Q&A Burnout at Breakfast next Monday. What would that be? Is it the 29th of June next week? Is that right? So I will be doing that for you next Monday, next week's Burnout at Breakfast, 8 a.m. So get your questions into me either in the chat or DM them to me. That's what I'm going to be doing next week. If you're watching this on YouTube and you found this helpful, hit subscribe. If you are watching this on LinkedIn and you want to get involved, give me a follow, and also ring that bell so that you get notified. It's amazing how much LinkedIn is still trying to keep me hidden. And if you are a coach who wants burnout coaching insights, then head over to kellyswingler.com. Again, I'll pop the link in the comments below. Head to kellyswingler.com, sign up for my emails. I send emails to burnout-informed coaches or burnout coaches or aspiring burnout coaches Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Different insights, different approaches, different ways of looking and understanding burnout. So yes, subscribe, follow, ring the bell, sign up for the emails, and I'll be back with you again next Monday, 8 a.m. Again, if you have whatever you want answering next week, if it's burnout related, let me know. I'll get that answered for you. Go and have an amazing rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time zone you're in at the moment. Go and enjoy the rest of your Monday. Go and enjoy the rest of your week. And I will see you again next Monday for the next Burnout Breakfast. Take care for now, everybody. Bye-bye.